The principles of design. The principles or design are the rules or guidelines of how artists use the elements of art to organize artwork. The last 2 weeks we have gone over the elements of art. Now we're going to learn how artists use those elements of art to create artwork. The first principle is balance. Balance is the arrangement of elements in an artwork so that no one part overpowers or seems heavier than any other part. There are 3 types of balance: symmetrical, asymmetrical, radial. The painting on the right is an example of symmetrical balance because both sides closely resemble the other. Symmetrical balance. Symmetrical balance is when one half of an artwork mirrors or closely resembles the other half. In this work of art, the left side mirrors the right side and therefore creates symmetrical balance because both sides are identical. Asymmetrical balance. Asymmetrical balance is when one part of an artwork does not reflect the other parts. One part seems heavier than the other part. In this Japanese wood print, we see that the left side, the waves are larger, fiercer, taller, and therefore seem heavier than the images or waves or the water on the right-hand side. Last, radial balance. Radial balance is when the elements of an artwork radiate or come out from a central point. Notice that this artwork starts in the middle of the 3D design and radiates out. In fact, this student started this artwork by gluing down the shapes that you see in the middle. The next principle, contrast. Contrast is the differences of various elements such as value, shape, colors in an artwork. Contrast creates excitement and interest in an artwork. When artists use contrast in their artwork, they are showing variety. This painting by Cezanne, entitled Still Life with Apples and Peaches, has a lot of contrast. Notice the pattern on the curtain versus the solid blank wall. Notice the contrast of shapes. Apples and peaches are organic shapes, contrasted with the organic shapes seen in the table. Notice the contrast in values, lights versus darks. Lots of contrast going on in this photograph to create an interesting piece of artwork. Types of contrast. With line, we can have thin versus thick lines, straight versus wavy. Shapes, we can have geometric shapes versus organic shapes, large shapes versus small shapes. Color contrast can include warm versus cool colors, intense colors versus dull colors. Value, light areas versus dark areas. Texture, rough textures versus smooth textures. Again, contrasts are differences. Artists use differences to create interest in their artwork. Using several differences is called variety. Notice the 2 pictures. High contrast is when you have a sharp difference. White letters on a black background, it's easy to read. Low contrast is when you have very little difference. The dark gray letters are harder to read on the black background. Movement. Movement is the path that the viewer's eyes follow in an artwork and can also refer to action within artwork. Notice the drawing completed by a French student on the right, and notice how your eye wants to move around to different parts of the drawing. Your eye tends to follow the dark shaded lines and even the small thin lines that create kind of a 3D shape. In this painting, the movement is created by action. There's action, the boxer is punching, and the other boxer is falling out of the ring. People on the ring side are starting to move out of the way or to catch the boxer that is falling out of the ring. Rhythm. Rhythm is the repetition of the elements of art that help show movement or action in an artwork. Notice how the artist here on the right repeated the lines to show or to give the figures a sense that they are dancing. And it creates a certain rhythm within the artwork because we sense they are moving. Pattern. Pattern is a two-dimensional decorative repetition in an artwork. A motif is the unit or design that is being repeated in an artwork. The painting on the right features the numbers 0 through 9 being repeatedly in the rows and in the columns. Many of you have pattern on your clothes. Take, for example, this plaid shirt. Notice the repeating pattern is repeated on the front, the sleeves, the neck, and the back. Patterns can also be found in nature. Think about the honeycomb of the bee and how the honeycomb shape is repeated. Think about the feathers on a peacock and how those designs are repeated all throughout the feathers. Think about when you slice an orange in half and the wedge shape that you see is repeated, creating a pattern. The next principle, emphasis. Emphasis is when an artist makes an element of art or an object in an artwork stand out. The focal point or focal area is the part of the artwork that is emphasized. The area that is emphasized is considered to be dominant, a dominant part of the artwork. Notice the painting here of all the umbrellas. One umbrella stands out because it is emphasized by a different color. We also see a person's eye that seems to be staring back at us. All the other umbrellas feature cool colors. The one umbrella that stands out or is the focal point, which we look at first, is painted with warmer colors. It has a dominant effect over all the other umbrellas, even though it's the same size and shape. Notice how this light purple or white flower is emphasized against these purple or light pink flowers. The focal area has a tendency to draw our eye to that area. Our last principle, unity. Unity is the arrangement of elements in an artwork that creates a feeling of wholeness or completeness. Notice Van Gogh's Starry Night. His artwork looks complete or unified because of the cool colors he used, the darker colors he used, his brush strokes, and the thick lines that we see that tend to move our eye around the painting. Harmony is achieved when artists use the elements to combine all parts of an artwork together to create a pleasing image. In this photograph, artist Sandy Scoggin used mannequins, people, and furniture and glued cheese doodles or cheese puffs on everything to create a harmonious picture. It is in harmony because we have similarities of the people, the similarities of color, the color orange, and the similarities we see in texture, the texture of the cheese doodle.